Hi. Thank you all so much for joining another episode of Celeste the Therapist podcast. My name is Celeste. I'm a therapist from Boston. We have a special guest. I'm going to have her introduce herself to you all.
Hello. Thank you first, Celeste, for having me here today. I'm so happy to be here. My name again is Coach Monique. I'm a life coach. My work is based in emotional intelligence, brain science, and the psychology of happiness. I've been doing this work for about 20 years, and I work with everyone from C-suite executives to stay-at-home parents, and even with young adults who are struggling to launch themselves in life.
Nice.
So all my work is based in brain science based tools. So I'm a big believer in giving individuals tools to make the changes they need to make or want to make right now and moving forward in their lives. 30 years down the road, the same tools still apply.
I love that. And we're going to learn about you. And I cannot wait to hear about the brain science because that's something I'm extremely passionate about because I've, over the years, have learned how powerful our mind is and how it's underutilized. And so Coach Monique is going to help us understand how to utilize it in a way that can really help us propel. But Coach Monique has not always been very high tech in this brain science, emotional intelligence. In fact, she struggled over the years with an undiagnosed learning disability. I can only imagine how much anxiety that brought on for you. But tell people a little bit about your background so they could understand you a little bit better.
Okay. Well, I used to say I was born with so many issues, I used a U-Haul in life. So, I was born to two parents who were doing the best that they could, but both had serious mental health issues and at different times when I was growing up were in extended stay in hospitals. I also had undiagnosed learning disabilities, short-term working memory. So I couldn't even really learn to add columns of math because I couldn't remember the number I was carrying over. And I also had undiagnosed epilepsy, which presented as staring spells. So I was often accused of being a daydreamer, not paying attention. And I spent most of my life in a series of confusion. What are they talking about? I'm right here. The learning disabilities were not diagnosed until I was in high school. And at that point, they said, well, there isn't really much we can do for you now. And the seizures, I wasn't diagnosed until I was 18 and pregnant. So I remember when I went to the guidance counselor in junior high, we didn't have middle school, we had junior high. And I had tried to sign up for Spanish because I knew that you needed a language to get into college. And he said, oh, honey, you're not going to be going to college, so you don't need to worry about Spanish. You can't go to college. And so that was a turning point for me where the excitement of possibility, I believed that adult that I would not be able to go to college. But as an adult at 24, I did go and graduated in 4 years.
Wow. When you think about, because the environment in the home wasn't the best with the parents not being around as much due to mental health struggles, and then you struggling because you probably didn't fit in with the other kids because you weren't on the same level educationally. What do you think that did to your self-esteem growing up? And then the icing on the cake, the teacher telling you you're not going to college. So what do you think that does to one's brain or self-esteem when that trajectory takes place in their life?
Well, we know that the brain doesn't fully develop till around the age of 27. But before the age of 11, the brain starts the process around 11 of being able to think critically and logically. So I like to say things that occur before that, direct and indirect messages, just get absorbed like a sponge. So young children don't say, oh, mom has depression or dad has an anger problem. They say, if there's something about me, if I was better, if I were different. And then those are not conscious decisions. So I got a lot of messages from my parents, from teachers, direct messages that you're not enough, and indirect messages in treatment. So I just really grew up believing that I wasn't enough and the things that I wanted were available to others, but they weren't available to me.
Wow.
So I started my path of personal development at 30. And it was around.
Well, what made you, because at 24, you did go to school, but what was that turning point? Because there's people that are listening who have had these messages and may not think they could do certain things. What allowed you to enroll in school at 24?
It was interesting. We eventually ended up married, but I was dating a guy and I was a single parent by 21. I was
Mhm.
divorced, a single parent. I graduated from high school, had gone to secretarial school, but it was a hot mess because I couldn't run the phones because it was, my working memory. I couldn't remember who was doing what. So that wasn't a good thing. So I was a massage therapist and I had a small business, but I was really struggling in every area of my life with my son. And I remember one day saying to him, I wish I was a smoker. And he
Wow.
looks at me and he goes, nobody wishes they're a smoker. Why would
Yeah.
you say that? And I said, because then I could quit smoking and that would be something I could do positive that I
Oh
would be
my
empowered.
God.
So within a couple of months, there was a small all women's college here in Pittsburgh, Chatham College, and they had a program for older women returning to college, many who had dropped out to support husbands through medical school, law school, college.
Mhm.
And they were developing this program for older women looking to go back. And even though I was 24, I was the youngest candidate that they ever accepted. But because I was divorced and already a parent and my life experience, I got into the program. And
Wow.
I met some amazing women. We still have dinner the first Wednesday of every month who were my support. They taught me how to be a parent. They taught me fun things like you don't wear white after Labor Day, even in Florida. Just like a whole myriad of things, and were really my mentors. And I
Wow.
graduated in 4 years. I'm not gonna say I ever made the dean's list, but I did it, and I was the first member of my family to graduate
Wow.
from college. And so that's kind of what got me on my path because I graduated at 28. I married Joe shortly thereafter. Uh,
Joe is who you were dating who
who,
talked to
yeah,
you about
he said,
stuff.
"What do
Okay.
you mean you wanna be a smoker?" Right? And, we lived in a beautiful home in a very affluent community. I had friends. I did not have friends growing up. I was very bullied. So I had checked off everything on the list that Monique could ever possibly want to be happy, was having a second child. I had an intact family, um, and I wasn't happy. And
Mhm.
I was so angry at myself that I wasn't happy, and I was depressed that I wasn't happy. And so, Christmas Day, went through the Santa Claus thing and taken 30 minutes off before I start the dinner thing. My husband had received a book from someone, and I just randomly opened the book. I'm an addictive reader, and it said that they would always be grateful for the Silva method. And I know what the Silva method was, but we had gotten our older son a computer with this newfangled service that I thought was going to be a fad called the internet. It would last, and this is before Google, right? So I looked up the Silva method, and it was written by Jose Silva, one of really the grandfather of personal development. And I bought the book the next day. I read it 3 times, and I went to training in Philly, went to a workshop. And it was a 2-day seminar, and within the first hour of the first day, the most powerful thing I learned was that you not only can change your thinking, but you have an obligation to do that. And I remember on the break walking to the restroom, and I still remember the carpet on the floor, that I could change my thinking and I could change my life. And
Wow.
that started a 10-year intense. I went to therapy. I became a Silva Method instructor. I did landmark education. I meditated. I mean, Joe Dispenza. I mean, I just really absorbed like a full-time job. I used to say I work myself like a full-time job. And I did that for 10 years. And that brought me to the place where my second son, I was waiting to pick him up from school, and I was kind of standing in the lobby of the elementary school, and all the parents are talking. I was standing there by myself, and there were a group of mothers who were just going on and on, let's be frank, about first world problems.
Mhm.
And I remember thinking to myself, if this group of ladies can't be happy, what chance do the rest of us have, right? Like we got problems. And it came to me like a spiritual awakening. And what came to me was what people need is easy to learn, easy to use, immediately relevant tools, techniques, and strategies. But that's how it came to me.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God. And could I be one of those people? I'm thinking, well, I don't think I could be one of those people, right? So I went home and I had a whole library of every book I've ever read. I outline it and put it inside the book cover. So I spent a year working it like a full-time job, and I put together a 4-week series. And right as I was wrapping it up, I went into my Pilates studio, and she said to me, we're a vitality studio and we don't do anything for emotional well-being. And she knew my story. She said, would you mind like putting together
You didn't tell her you was doing a 4-week nothing?
I did not. And we had 11 women sat on the floor. Mind you, I had to carry my whiteboard every week, and we sat on the floor. And for 2 years, I worked through connections. I did motivational speaking. People wanted to hear my story. I started doing more of these group trainings. I started getting requests for life coaching, and I wanted to just really be highly professional. So I went to the Emotional Institute and did my training, and then did life coaching all over the city, but in person. And then my clients started saying things like, hey, would like to bring you into the business. And this was a vestige of thinking I wasn't enough. And could I do this? Because I didn't have corporate experience, I went and got an MBA. So I can tell you, no one has ever asked. They don't care. They don't know. They're never like, what are your qualifications? No one cares. Except, now I have an MBA. So, but
we know, my audience knows. Congratulations.
Yeah, it's total. No, it's never a waste, right? And just as a sidebar, I got all A's.
What?
Except, well, 2 funny stories. I got a B in ethics because he did not like my ethics paper. It was a Catholic institution, and my paper was coloring outside the lines. So he told me I either change my paper or get a B, and it really irked me to get a B in ethics. I stood by. And the other class was, and we laugh about this, Rachel. She's a little Chinese woman. She taught technology. Anyone who knows me, you can ask Olivia, my assistant. I am no technology. I can barely run my phone. And so she would have all these tests, but she offered a lot of extra credit. So, I was on that extra credit like nobody's business. And I went to her at one point and I was talking about the grades. And she said, Monique, you already have 120 points. Quit being an overachiever. And then I said to her, Rachel, that says a lot coming from a Chinese woman.
For real.
So I wear it like a badge of honor. I never miss an opportunity to say I had a Chinese woman. Overachiever.
100, yeah.
You can't do any better than that. I'm like, okay.
Wow, that's so. I have so many questions. I just want to go back a little bit because when you talk about you checked all the boxes, right? Because that's something. It's not a you thing. It's like a cultural thing in America around like getting married, having a house, a car, all this stuff, right? When people are in that mindset around like checking off the boxes, how does that affect their vision of their current life? If they haven't checked it, or even if they checked it, but how does that affect their vision?
Well, one thing you did skip, Celeste. I had a garbage disposal. And I was the first person in my family to have building science. So when you check the boxes, do not.
When I got a fridge that poured ice, I was like, oh my gosh, I made it. I was so excited about my ice.
You have
the little things.
Right? When you're oh my God, yes. So don't forget my garbage. So what it does is you check all the boxes, and where do you go? That's where I was like, oh my God, what else is there? There's, like when I tell you I had an integral garage with an electric garage door opener, I had built-in appliances. Right. I took my kids to Disney World on vacation. Like, if this isn't, what is there for me? If I can't be happy now, how am I ever going to be happy? Mm-hmm. And like I said, I'm an addictive reader. And when I read that line, I'll always be grateful for the Silva method. I didn't know what it was, because I didn't like Google it till after midnight, but I knew that was important.
Yeah.
And so I had never taken a road trip by myself. It was to Philly. I live in Pittsburgh. So the next day after I read the book, I called my grandmother and I said, would you come and stay with the kids? And I called my husband and I said, I'm going to Philly. I had never been on a road trip. I'd never stayed in a hotel alone. I didn't know anybody, but I knew that I needed to do that.
Wow.
In my life, things have always come up when I have to do that. Like when I traveled to London to study with Marissa Peer for RTT hypnotherapy, I read a line in a book and I was like, oh, I have to do that. I made the arrangements. I announced to my family, I'm going to London for 2 weeks.
One of the things that you sound a lot like how I've lived my life. And I always feel like there's something inside of me that propels me. But when I meet with people, it's like so many things stop them. But when I think about your history and how you had to figure things out, and you didn't even realize you were working with not all functioning, but you had to try really hard. You've been trying really hard your entire life. So I'm not surprised that you continue to do this throughout your life and managed to create this program, which I want to hear about now, because one of the things that people don't realize is like, yes, money is helpful for survival and our needs being met. But there's a lot of people with money that are not happy. And so and I think about America, because I've traveled to other places that were a lot poorer than we are. We have a really high depression anxiety rate. And so there's more medications being created. There's more therapists and psychiatrists, and that's not working, right? So what is it about the way the brain is functioning for people that is creating, in your opinion, this like depression and anxiety that we're seeing so much of lately?
Well, there's so many messages, right? We're constantly being sold to. I mean, we don't even realize how many times a day we're being sold to. And now with, Alexa, she's popping up stuff on our phone because we mentioned a blue sweater. Right now we have 10 blue sweaters on our phone, and all these things. So, and we're always getting the message that we're not the whole luxury brand industry. Think about it. If you want a purse, you could use a shopping bag to carry your belongings, right? Or you can have a $10,000 Valentino. It's still the same thing. So some entire industries are based on making you feel like you need something outside of yourself in order to be enough. And so we just keep taking that in, and we get messages when we're young, what it means to be successful. And I always tell my clients when I use the word success, I'll be whatever that means to you. And it means something different to everyone. For some people, it's all about money, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And for other people, it's all about health is the new wealth, right? Whatever is for you. So there's a lot of pressure.
And you know what, Coach Monique, as well, I don't even think some people really define success for themselves. I think that there's this idea of what success looks like, but when I talk to people about it and say, well, what is it for you? They're stumbling over their words. And you make a great point. It's like what it looks like success for Celeste is different for Coach Monique. But we had to sit down and figure out what that looks like. And I think that's where people are not realizing the messages or what they're using as success. These messages that they're getting on their social media account, whatever it is, and they're not seeing how it's affecting their mindset around their life and what they have access to in the moment. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, my thoughts are, I always say, if whatever you're doing isn't based in brain science, you're not getting your ROI, your return on investment. So there are 4 core reasons for all emotional suffering. Excuse me. And the first one is the belief that I'm not enough. And I've been doing this work for nearly 20 years. I work with people all over the world. I currently have 3 clients that are out of the country. One's in London, one's in South Africa, and one's in Uganda. So, I mean, this is absolutely true. I believe about 97% of the population believes they're not enough. And some people, when I say that, they immediately go, oh yeah, that's me. Other people aren't so sure, but when we dig deep, it comes up. For example, imposter syndrome is, I'm not enough. And a version of that.
Yeah.
The second belief is the idea that what I want isn't available to me, even if others can have it. And I certainly grew up with that, right? I knew that people went to college. I knew that people bought brand new cars. I knew that people did a lot of things, but there was something about me that wasn't available to me. The third is the fear of rejection.
Mm-hmm.
As a species, we're actually not that old. And it wasn't that long ago when being rejected from your tribe meant you were likely to perish.
Mm.
So that fear factor is still alive, right? The primal brain. And the fourth is the need for connection. So we are designed, wired, and built to be connected. If I pass you on the street and I smile at you and you see me and don't smile back, that's probably intentional because we have mirror neurons in our brain that are helping us to connect. So I always say that everyone has a pie. Usually one is dominant. It's oftentimes the belief I'm not enough, but everyone has a pie with those 4 ingredients.
And when you think about these 4 ingredients, if anyone is struggling with any one of them, let's say fear of rejection, do you feel like it kind of people tend to struggle and feel stuck in life for different in different areas because of these areas being not complete or not feeling whole in these 4 areas?
Yeah, so people who struggle with fear of rejection will tolerate things that are not in line with their core values because you have to stay with this person, right?
Mm-hmm.
This marriage, or your parents won't accept you, or
Yeah.
this is unacceptable behavior in your culture. So you're going to be
Yeah.
rejected for who you are.
Mm-hmm.
That keeps people living small, and they
Mm-hmm.
can't express themselves, who they are. They feel very alone and very isolated, which is about connection, right? But in order to stay connected to this group, I can't be authentically who I am. So then I feel alone.
Damn, that's good. You're right about that. The first one, belief that I'm not enough, and these messages could have stemmed from childhood, from just the marketing system that we have here of selling us so many things. When that belief is disrupted, how do people like tend to struggle when they don't feel like they're enough? What do you see in your practice?
Well, it's so common, right? We see a
Yeah.
lot of anxiety and depression. We
Yep.
see people who won't use their voice, um, who just don't believe that they deserve.
Yeah.
We have a conceptual model for change. A is awareness, B is behavior, C is creating change. And with the awareness piece, I use your thoughts, your beliefs, your expectations, and your interpretations of past experiences. And as you gain more awareness about those stories, it naturally and organically shifts behaviors. So most change management programs are focused on the behavior. Do this, don't do that, do more of this, do less of that, right? And they have very low success rates. There are some industries like weight loss and drug and alcohol recovery that's part of the industry business model that you're probably not going to be successful the first time. So
Mm.
focusing on the behavior isn't going to get you the long term.
Mhm.
So that's why I say your return on investment has to be based in brain science, because you need to become aware of what you don't know that's running the show. As that awareness increases, you're not focused on the behavior organically and naturally changes.
Yeah, Coach Monique is right. And I want to, so, you have these 4 things that you realize it stops people. The things that Coach Monique is talking about is literally like how I do therapy. I don't have a program like this, but something that's powerful about the brain is that I tell people it believes what we tell it. And the awareness piece is something that I talk so much about, because a lot of times things are happening and we're not even aware that it's going on. So being aware of what's happening is really huge. What happens as you're working with people through these things, as far as like the strategic planning that you do with them? Because what I like about what you do in your program is that it's very tangible, very direct. And, a lot of people spend a lot of money, and I'm a therapist, so I'm glad that I get to say this so people won't think that, oh, you're just saying that because you're not a therapist. People spend a lot of money. People can't afford therapy. People spend years in therapy. I've heard people say therapy hasn't worked for them, right? Because you think about it, like like I said, I don't have a direct program like where there's science based, and I'm talking to people. I'm playing it by ear. I'm trying to figure it out, right? And so, I mean, luckily, like the people I've worked with, they've had great success. But I know, like, everybody doesn't have success, and I never want people to feel like they can't heal because they're not doing it the traditional therapy way, right? So that's why this podcast is here. But after you are kind of going through these things with people, what kind of strategic planning takes place for them?
So what we do is a lot of the information that we're talking about today. Our first session is really just teaching people how their brain works, right? Having people understand that all of our lives, even before we're born, there are billions of neurons in our brain. And Hebb's law says what fires together wires together. So the more you engage in a thought, a belief, an expectation, or an interpretation of past experiences, you're literally wiring your brain. And since like attracts like, right, you're going to have that thought and other thoughts that are a match for that. And then there's a small part of our brain called the reticular activation system. And it's very small, about the size of a nut. And its only job is to filter. And it's the fastest filter on the planet. So to the extent that we think about it, we think we're taking it all in. We're taking everything in. But we're never taking everything in. Our reticular activation system is only allowing things in, or mostly only allowing things in that are a match to what we already believe or expect. And one of the things I'll say to clients is, when's the last time you saw a green car? And sometimes people know, sometimes they drive a green car, or I saw a pea green car broken down alongside the road, right? Most of the time people have no idea. So I explained to them that 17% of the cars on American roads are green, and now you're going to see green cars. And when I talk to you next week, I want the count. By the way, the highest count has been 27. And they always come back with a number, because now we've attached importance to green cars. You were always seeing them, but because they weren't important, they weren't getting let in. So anytime we attach an emotion, and when there's emotion attached, right, then it magnifies it, and then things get let in. So if you've learned that you're not enough, directly or indirectly, I had teachers I was a teacher's nightmare. Nobody wanted me, right? I had issues at home with my parents. I got a lot of messages I wasn't enough. So those were the kinds of things that I filtered in, right? And everything that went wrong, or every time I struggled or was rejected, it was always about, well, confirmation that I'm not enough. And that's true for everyone. So I always say information is power. When you understand why you're feeling what you're feeling and why you're doing what you're doing, that is the place where you can step into your power and make a change. But you can't do something about something you're unaware of. So I don't care if you're trying to implement, a new program in a multi-million, Fortune 500 company. It's not about behaviors. It's about why, right? So TED Talks is based on stories, right? They can take any topic, turn it into a story, and you're riveted, right? What do I care about astronomy? But if you're going to do a TED Talk about it, it'll be fascinating, right? Because the mind works in stories and pictures. So a lot of our work is based in stories and pictures that work for you rather than against you, and are more honest.
Wow. And I just learned something new, reticular activation. I wrote it down because I want to look it up. Because basically, before because I have a trauma history and all that, but prior to that, I was filtering all this negative things about myself, right? And the world, basically, because I'm filtering it, my brain is able to see it in that way as well. But then I started working on myself, the reticular activation. Now I'm not filtering that in. Like, I'm able to just filter in the things that are helping me. Like, it's not that I don't get those messages, but they're not embedded in me because of that little thing, reticular activation.
Right. Reticular activation system.
Okay. Right. Thank you.
It's custom to each person. What's the word I'm looking for? We're reprogramming.
Yes, I use that word.
Reprogramming our reticular activation system, changing the algorithm, right, of what happened. So when you start to know that you are enough, you get a lot of confirmation that you are enough.
You do.
Step into, right, I can have those things. You start
Yep.
seeing those things. So there's infinite possibility in any moment. It's just, what are you letting in?
Yes.
Not a conscious choice. So it goes back to those 4 core reasons.
Yeah.
So calibrate, that was the word I was trying to think of. So everyone's
Yeah.
reticular activation system is uniquely calibrated to them. So when you use brain science tools, techniques, you're recalibrating at the level of brain, your neurochemical cocktail that's being released, right? Is it stressors or is it dopamine? Is it making you feel good? Is it stressing you out? What is it that you believe about yourself that can be true? That is true.
Mhm.
Because, Celeste, we are all liars. We all lie to ourselves in ways that we never dream of lying to someone else.
She's right.
Oh, I have to share the funniest story with you.
Okay.
And I'm going to teach this technique in just a few minutes, but I had this story.
Okay.
So I usually met with her later in the day, but we were meeting earlier, and she was a C-suite executive. And it came up in the conversation that she didn't feel like she was aging very well, and she was beautiful, and that was really a problem for her. And I would never have guessed she was beautiful, but she just felt like she wasn't aging well, and it was undermining her confidence. And so I said to her, do you ever think like you're a Victoria? Do you ever tell yourself you're a Victoria's Secret model? Now, this goes back a while when they used to
was popping, yeah.
popping around in their feathers. And she looked at me like she wanted a refund. And she said, well, why would I? I'm not. And I said, oh, well, you lie to yourself so often anyway. Why not just tell yourself a lie that, And she goes, that's ridiculous. I said, come on, pay me a lot of money. Here I am. She goes, okay. So we were kind of joking about it. She texted me 3 hours later and she said, you're not going to believe this. She said, I've had 3 men hit on me this afternoon. She said, I can't remember the last time a man hit on me. Well, obviously the goal wasn't for her to be hit on, but it was certainly a nice afterthought, right? But the whole idea was, when she changed her thoughts,
yeah,
she changed her body language, her expectation, her reticular activation system, right? Got recalibrated. And here's someone who's walking with swagger like a Victoria's Secret model. Life. So what you think about is the most important thing.
Yeah.
Tell people your most important relationship is the relationship you have with yourself.
100%.
Because everywhere you go, there you are. Someone wrote a book, but that's true.
You're with yourself 24/7. And so I say you can either be with a bully or you can be with somebody that's empowering. And Coach Monique is right. We lie to ourselves all the time. And a lot of it is due to programming and lack of awareness. That awareness is powerful. And then the education piece, one thing that I do is I educate people around why things are happening. I feel like this should have been taught in grade school about our emotions. There's no reason why we should be full functioning adults before we really start to cave in and learn this stuff, usually because of dissatisfaction or something's going on. But these are the ABCs of life, because no matter how you dress your kids, no matter what zip code you live in, life is going to happen. And what happens inside of us really affects what we are able to see, right? So I think that's a powerful message that you're able to deliver for people. Now, one of the things that I want to do is highlight like what you're doing. So if people who are listening would want to work with you, how does your program work and how can they reach you?
So how our program works, our most popular program is Unlock Bold Change. And so how the program works is we offer 8 sessions. Each session is 90 minutes to 2 hours. And we do that intentionally. I'm sure as a therapist, right? Insurance dictates a 45 or a 50-minute hour. It's hard to really dig deep, in that time. By the time you get adjusted into your seat and how was the weather, right? You've cut into your time. So because I'm such a tool-driven coach, each session you learn 1 to 3 tools, right? We talk a little bit enough for context, but it's very education driven. Mm-hmm. So we also offer unlimited phone, text, and email support between sessions, so that when clients are struggling with something, 2 things. First of all, I just don't want them to struggle. Like if we have a session this morning and you have something upsetting going on this evening, I don't want you stewing about it for a week. But the other thing is I have found that it's easier to cut through trauma and issues when the emotions are high. Think of it like like a rope. If you have a rope and it's slack, it's harder to break through it.
Yeah.
Taut, it's easier. So when those emotions are a little bit higher and it's taut, then it's easier to cut through it.
Mm.
Easier to self-actualize through it because the
Right.
energy around it is still very high.
Yep.
Now, not necessarily if someone's in the midst of a panic attack, we might treat that differently, right? But not sitting on it. And so the average person to do the 8 sessions we find takes 12 to 16 weeks. My clients tend to see change with the very first session. They leave the office differently than they came in, whether we do it via Zoom or in person. I have a physical office here in Pittsburgh, and I have people travel from all over the country sometimes to come to the office. And clients will do some in person, some virtual. I have clients that I've never met personally. And a lot of that shifted with the pandemic as well.
Yep. And then tell people a little bit, you were sharing a little bit about your stats because, as I said earlier, there's so many different ways to treatment. And I know for some people, therapy doesn't work for them. And even people I've had that they're so tangible and I have to give them uh, material because I recognize the cognitive way that I'm doing it does not work for them. So tell people a little bit about your stats that you've tracked when doing this work.
Yeah, we track it, and anywhere between 75 and 80% of people who schedule discovery calls, and we have a complimentary discovery call that you can book through the site on Calendly. 75 to 80% of those people are either currently in therapy or have been in therapy and not gotten the results they wanted. And some of them say, I got very good therapy. I just didn't give me the results I wanted. She volunteered to do her own testimonial. I had a client a few years ago who came into her first session, her discovery call. She had 27 problems. And I told her, no, you just have one problem, express it in 7 ways. And she was not amused, but she had literally been in therapy for 27 years. She was one of her therapist's first patients when she started her practice. She stayed with her until she retired, getting married, having her family, buying a house, getting a divorce. She was with her 27 years. And she said, I had good therapy. She said in the video, I had good therapy, but I got more out of the first session or two with Coach Monique than I did 27 years ago. She was so happy. She said to us, can I make a testimonial for you?
Wow.
And she says in the video, I thought I had 27 problems, but I just had one. I didn't feel like I was enough.
Wow, that is amazing. And the way that you talk about the tools that you've learned in the brain and all of that, I know emotional intelligence, brain science, all of this is the reason why people have such great results from your program, I'm assuming, because if I can go back to school, thank God I don't feel like I'm not enough, but I do want to go back to learning about the brain. Like I want to take a program so bad because I realize just how important it is to our knowledge so that we can realize that. What did you say that when you walked into that room the first time on the carpet, it says you have to change your mind? What was it that it said?
That you not only can, but you have an obligation to change your
Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah.
And the carpet was a green and gold floral. I'll never forget it.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what I believe, and I think that if people don't realize that it's possible, they're never gonna try.
I was never trying. I actually grew up, my father was a Vietnam reconnaissance Marine, and he used to say, like, I know what you're thinking, and you're, basically telling me that I wasn't allowed to think anything he didn't want me to think. And I just never, ever thought about not only the ability, but that I could or should change the way I thought. It was
I
like one of
never
those,
saw.
you don't know what you don't know. And to me, that was life changing. If I live to be 110, I will always look back on that time, that
Wow.
moment. And that's when everything started to shift for me. It took 10 years personally for me to get to that place. But if you're going to go back for further education, Celeste, don't pick the MBA. You'll be better off with the brain science.
Yeah. No, I didn't even know that was possible, but I just it won't be an MBA. No, don't worry, I'm not.
And just a helpful hint. Yeah. So this is why we tell people, if you don't change, right? So anytime, and I wrote my book, now it's 8 years old, hard to believe. Most people don't need a therapist. They just need to change. And I write right in the preface, I am pro therapy. But
Right,
for
right,
people, it's not helping, or it's not helping enough. And I
right.
have 3 therapists who refer to me, and I refer to therapists. So I have a very open relationship, and I believe in therapy, but people do need
Other
alternatives.
options, yeah.
And, I've had clients who have come in and done my 8-week program in 6 weeks because they have a major decision they need to make, and they got to get to a decision or to an answer quickly. And you can
Wow.
do that in this kind of work, where in a 45 or 50-minute session, I don't care, how well intentioned and how well it's run, it just offers different opportunities for different
It
kinds of.
does. You're right. I agree with you 100%. I love everything you're saying. I always say, like, if I sat down and because when I see a client and I hear their story and the awareness, all of the things you're talking about, I'm like, if I sit down and do this work, I can figure out how to like create a program. And you created that program because everything you say is literally how I've come to understand us as human beings and how we operate. So, Coach Monique, thank you so much. Let people know where they can find you.
Well, the website is coachmonique.com. That's COACH, Monique, MONIQUE.com. And you can also text 66866, and that will give you a link to the website and the socials. We're Coach Monique on Facebook, The Coach Monique on Twitter and Instagram. Isn't that correct? Yeah, I'm checking with Olivia. That's And then, you can sign up on through the website with our Calendly to schedule an appointment. I do a lot of work with women, women-owned businesses as well. I just got back from Atlanta. I did women in manufacturing and ran a workshop for them. So I do a lot of different things, from motivational to running workshops and seminars and individuals with clients. And I always want people to walk away with the tools. So I
Yeah.
don't tell you what to do. I tell you, hey, here it is in
Yeah.
print. Go do it. Call me if you have a question.
Coach Monique, thank you so much. You're lovely. You're funny. I'm sure your clients have a great time with you because of your personality and affect. It's really warm and you're easy to talk to. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for having me today. This has been just the highlight of my day. Really, it's been fun.